It's great to see you. Different angle for me instead of sitting in the back, so this is fun. So myself and Bill Glancy of the training team will go through hopefully a relatively short presentation so that we can jump into some actual workshopping exercises. It's great to listen and learn, but as we all know, unless we actually put into use what we learn, kind of falls by the wayside. So sometimes it's a little uncomfortable, we're not prepared, we don't have the right answers, but this is a safe environment to actually try some new things and get a little bit of feedback to see how we can improve going forward. So let's see. Let me get started. And we'll start with very simple stuff. So today we're talking about behavioral interviewing. And again, behavioral versus traditional and other styles of interviewing and methods. So, definition, behavioral interviewing is based on the premise that a person's past performance on the job is the best predictor of future performance and behavior. The interviewer wants to know how you will act and react in certain situations. It's not just what you did in the past, which is very easy to list. I did this, that, and the other thing. They want to get a little bit more into the psychology of what kind of person you are and ultimately what kind of a fit you would be for the organization. So, for example, a behavioral question might ask, give me an example of a time when you motivated others. Now, that kind of an answer might entail a little bit of the psychology as to how do you motivate someone else? What did you do? What did you bring to the table? Now, those are the qualities that really show you and highlight you and what makes you special and unique, what you bring to the table, versus what were the responsibilities of your past position. Again, that's pretty simple to say, I did this, that, and the other thing. So a few statistics on why these are becoming so much more popular today. And some studies tout that up to 55% of these behavioral interviews are predictive of future on-the-job behavior versus only 10% in traditional style interviewing. So think to yourself, if you were hiring for your company, what would you use? You want to get to those questions that are going to give you the most detailed information about a person. They are touted as providing a more objective set of facts on which employers make employment decisions, again, versus other traditional methods. Again, these style of questions will dig deeper. They are going to how you were thinking about something, why, what was your thought process, what was the motivation behind it, how do you react in certain situations. And again, these are much more difficult to fudge. You know, our resumes all look terrific. We say, you know, they're car stories, how great we are, what great accomplishments we did. But then when we get into the interview, we actually have to talk about that and substantiate it. So again, I can say I did this, that, and the other thing. Likely it's true, right? But you never know how somebody might embellish to make it sound better than possibly it is. But when you start going through deeper questions that really, you start to get a little conversational. Really, so how did you do that? What were you thinking at the time that happened? What did your coworkers say about that? You start getting into a whole different conversation that really brings out your personality. That's what they're looking for. That's how they're going to find that fit for their company. All right. So again, success potential, both what does the employer see in you and what is your success potential as a candidate for that position. So what the interviewer will do, they will identify specific job-related experiences, knowledge, skills, abilities, whatever that particular position requires, right? Step number one, prior to them writing the job description, they need to identify what that is. Then the employer will structure pointed questions to elicit those detailed responses, once again, aimed at determining does the candidate possess the traits and behaviors that we need. Again, it may be easy to find out, do you know how to do the job because you've done those same things in the past, but are you the personality and style of person that we need that fits into that? And employees, some employers are using a rating system to evaluate selected criteria during the just a tiny example of some characteristics and traits. The list is endless. What might they be looking for in your responses? Critical thinking, initiative, teamwork, flexibility, decisiveness, leadership, professionalism, integrity, judgment, willingness to learn. Again, these aren't exactly what did you do. It really tells a much bigger story about you, what kind of an employee you would be on site. So our little tip. Evaluate and analyze the job description to determine the characteristics that are important. And just think about this for a moment. When you look at a job description, of course, if it's a decent one, it's going to tell you what they need. And a lot of times it might say something like self-starter or high energy. You'll see some of those words. But in addition to evaluating the job description, there are certain basic things that you can figure out that you should prepare for on your own. So I'll ask you a question. If you were applying for a sales position for a medical device company, what do you think are some characteristics of a great salesperson? Just shout them out.
Listening skills.
Listening. Outgoing.
Communication.
Good communication. Persistence.
Take rejection.
Take rejection. Exactly. That's a huge one in sales. So this is not rocket science. You know this. Be sure that you prepare in your car stories and in your talking points examples that show off these traits that you believe that they would be looking for. Just to use a different example, let's say it's a chemist position and you're going to be working in a lab. What kind of qualities and behaviors do you think you need in a chemist?
Precision.
Absolutely. Precision, process, attention, very high level of attention to detail.
With some analytical skills.
Analytical skills. Yeah, has anybody ever had this where they read a job description, they're preparing for the job description, and as they prepare, they go through all the details of what they did that matches what the company is looking for, and doesn't really focus on maybe some of these things. And you know what, it's understandable, there's nothing wrong with it because it makes sense. Here's what they're looking for, and here's what I did, and I want to prove to them and show them that that is what I did. I had one interview, and I prepared for it that way, and it was unbelievable because there was not one question related to the job description. Not a one. I am not kidding you, I was absolutely flabbergasted. And it was so interesting to me, and the whole entire line of questioning were behavioral questions. Were you ever in a situation with a team and they weren't getting along? How did you bring it back into focus? How do you feel about group decisions? Do you think they make better decisions or worse decisions than an individual? I mean, it was really very, very interesting. And sometimes you ask yourself, how do I prepare for something like this? We never know because we don't know what we're going to get. Steve?
I was just going to say, the job that I recently got, they actually put me through a personality assessment before they even interviewed me. And those are all the things that came out of it. And then I found out the references that they did on me, those are exactly the types of questions they asked to confirm what came out of the personality assessment and also the behavioral interviews that they gave me.
Exactly. So again, what do we learn? It's all about preparation, and Bill is going to talk about that. Preparation is the key to everything. So you know what you did on your past job, you know what the new job needs, you prepare those stories, but you can certainly come up with a certain set of car stories that exemplify and show off those particular characteristics that you have. Interesting, I too had once had an interview, and for that interview I had to do a behavioral assessment. How many people have done even personality assessments? Most of us. And similar to the personality assessments, behavioral assessments, you notice there's lots and lots of questions aimed at the same thing, but asking it just slightly different. This is what they mean by your responses are going to be more true to your behavior than a traditional question. You can't fudge it. Teamwork. If I ask you 3 different questions about being in a team, and you sigh every single time, well, I'm kind of going to get a clue that that is not your thing, okay? And if that's important, you're not the person for me. So you cannot fudge this stuff. questions will typically start out with a tell me about a time. Describe a situation. Or give me an example. So I put a few on here. Tell me about a time when you had to deal with a conflict on the job. Remember, it's one thing that you knew how to do this project, but in the past, how did you deal with conflict? Because that's what, based on what you tell me, that's what I'm going to assume is what you're going to do here. This is how you're going to interact with people, and this is going to be very telltale. Describe a situation when you were able to strengthen a relationship by communicating effectively. What made your communication effective? I'm trying to dig into your style. How do you talk to people? How do they respond to you? Give me an example of when you took a risk to achieve a goal. What was the outcome? So I have asked some of our PSG colleagues and trainers to help me with a sample question. Nancy Cole, can I have you come up and I'm going to ask you a question? Okay, you can stay right here and I'll give you a microphone. Because mind you, when we're done with the presentation portion, this is what you're going to get a chance to do in the comfort of your own little round table. Okay. So Nancy, let me ask you, can you tell me about a recent situation in which you had to deal with a very irate or upset customer?
In my previous role of customer satisfaction specialist, I was responsible for all the customer complaints. I had a customer that called one day and told me that we had sent them mixed parts and that their production line was down. I diffused the situation by telling the person that I would do whatever was necessary for me to handle their situation immediately. And the first part of that, that I took action on, was to check to see if we had other inventory that we could send them as soon as possible. I checked on the computer, saw that we had stock, brought the parts downstairs and had them go through a QC check, and the parts were sent out immediately to the customer. The second part of the resolution was to figure out what had happened and how this problem had occurred, why we had sent them mixed parts. One of the things that I pride myself on is one of my nicknames at my job is Nancy Drew. I always get to the bottom of the situation, and I'm tenacious about finding out the cause of a problem. So based on the lot number that the customer gave me, I was able to check the stock, found out that it had been compromised, the stock was taken off the shelf, the lot number was killed so that it could not be shipped again, made sure that we did not have any other shipments that were going to this customer, and then put on my other hat as the internal auditor and wrote up a corrective action to our quality department, and the onus was put on them to investigate from the manufacturing standpoint what had happened. I was able to track the shipment that I sent to the customer, and when they received the shipment, I called them back, made sure that they had received the satisfactory parts, and asked them if there was anything else that I could do to make this situation okay. They told me that they really appreciated what I had done, the work, the follow-up, and then I was going to follow up and give them the information on the corrective action.
Thank you so much. If you were going to extrapolate any behavioral traits or characteristics from that story, what are some of the things that you got from that, aside from the fact that she obviously handled the situation to satisfaction, which is always a good thing, but is there anything else that came across to you that told you something about Nancy?
And she went past a customer market behind the scenes to find out how she could affect the process. Doesn't happen.
Exactly. Extremely thorough. In front of the scenes with the customer, behind the scenes, and clearly if you're looking for customer service quality control, those behaviors exhibit the kind of person that you would want on your team. So let's try one more. Greg Reeves. All right. I got a good one for you, Greg. So, Greg, will you describe a time when you found it necessary to make an exception to the rule to get something done? What did you do and what were the results?
Hi, I'm Greg Reeves, and I'm a logistics expert and transportation operations manager. And my last position as a senior operations manager for a very large transportation company, I was given a situation on a Friday evening where I ran the biggest operation on an eastern seaboard for our company. And that Friday evening, I found out when I walked into the office that my two supervisors that worked for me weren't going to be there that night. So I knew that that night, after looking at the forecast, that I was going to have 1 million pounds of freight to move that night with my dock workers, right? And I had to figure out a way to get this moved and to get out of there before 5 o'clock in the morning. That was my biggest objective. So what I did was I brought my guys in. I told them what the situation was. I said, hey guys, you know, we could either be here past 5 o'clock in the morning, or we're supposed to be out at 2:30 in the morning, okay? Or I'll give you some incentive, okay? If in fact you guys can do a lot of the paperwork the supervisors do during the day or during the evening, right? Let me do my thing to direct the operation, all right? I will let you guys get out of here as soon as you're done. So now I had a bunch of superstars working. Okay, now I had a bunch of superstars. And what happened is, now we started working through the night, and I started looking at the processes that were working, and I'm saying, wow, we're ahead of the game, all right? So by the end of this thing, the end of the story is, by 1:30 in the evening, we were wrapped up. All right, now what I've done here is, per union rules and per our own company rules, these guys are supposed to work at 2:30 in the morning, okay? I told these guys, hey, if you can get out of here, we can get out of here. I'll sign you out. Well, that's a rule that's usually not broken. But I said, for this night, I didn't care what my managers would tell me, this is what we're gonna do, because I want to get out of here also. And we got out of here on time, all the work was done, everything was cleaned up, we had an excellent night. That's my support.
So what did you learn about Greg, other than, once again, he got the job done?
Well, that's it. You got the job done. Initiative. Yeah, thinks outside the box.
Good manager, thinks outside the box. You're right, and you know, it's interesting, you said like a good manager, and one of the things that I heard in that is, it's the relationship, right? The fact that he got them to all step up to the plate and help him in a pinch like that, that has not easily happened if you don't already have some kind of credibility and a good relationship with people. So that was very insightful.
I think along the lines with the relationship as well, you know, it's a question of knowing what's important to the person on the other side of the table there to say, what's going to do for these people to get them where I need them to be.
Right.
You know?
Right.
I think it was also a risk taker.
Sure.
Definitely a risk taker.
Especially with labor is involved, so you know that's tough. But you know you have to kind of weigh what is the lesser of the two evils: breaking this rule or having 1 million pounds of shipment be delayed and late. You know, then what does that result? So the fact that he did that really says a lot about him.
I also learned that he needs to stay late as well.
Great. All right, terrific. So we went through a little bit about what behavioral interviews are, a couple of examples, and now Bill Glancy is going to review preparation, what you need to do to prepare for this, and then we're going to go into our round tables right where we're seated. Okay? All right, thank you.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
As Ellen succinctly said, preparation is critical, and that's what I'm. The way I look at it is, if you when I say the word interview, what kinds of emotions come to mind?
Anxiety.
Anxiety, okay. I can relate to that. Right. I believe that if you do a good job, we all know that interviews can be stressful. And I raised that question just to bring that out. But I believe that if you do a good job of preparing for the interview, that's a way to help bring the stress level down to a more manageable level and make you a stronger, more appealing candidate. Make sense?
Yes.
We talk about identifying the skills the employer is looking for, which we do to begin with. Researching the company is a given, but I would encourage you to not limit your research to just the company. I would strongly encourage you to research the company and all of the people who will be interviewing. And some of the benefits from this are, obviously it makes you a more informed decision maker. And if you do a great job of articulating your knowledge of the company during the course of your interview, I think that's a way to help you distinguish yourself from your competition. And if you think about it, what are we trying to do in transition? We know there's a lot of competition out there. We're trying to distinguish ourselves from the competition, and that's one way you can do that. And I think the interviewer, hopefully it's the hiring manager, will be favorably impressed with your ability to talk about how much you know about their company.
Bill,
Sure.
the research, would you extend that to also researching the competition, the company's competition, and the industry as a whole, or their particular segment of it?
You raise a very good point that I'm going to get into a little bit later on. So if you can bear with me, I think that's an excellent point. One of another benefit that accrues to you is obviously when you do the research, I think one of the things that you may find is potential problems that you can solve for the company. And there are others, but because of time constraints, I'm just going to limit it to a few. Basically, my opinion is, or I believe that knowledge is power. And if you agree with that premise, then I think you'll find that researching a potential employer just makes good sense. For the benefit of the people who are new, I know most people understand what car stories and star stories are, but for the benefit of the people who are new to transition, new to PSG, and really aren't familiar with what a car story is, I just want to digress for a minute and just talk about what that means. I'm sorry, what a car story actually refers to. It's an acronym that's used frequently in PSG, and it stands for Challenge, Action, Result. STAR stands for Situation, Task, Action, Result. We use the term car stories frequently, particularly in training, and I'm sure in other aspects of PSG, because we believe that's a very effective mechanism for you to use to help promote yourself. We would suggest that you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just out of curiosity, and you may be coming up to it, I don't know, but, seeing as how a lot of us here have a number of years experience wherever, and you maybe limit your work experience to a certain few companies, whatever, would you recommend using car stories, let's say, from places that maybe aren't on your resume?
Not necessarily. I I would use your judgment. We think that it makes sense to try to use more recent car stores as opposed to car stores that are somewhat more dated. We would suggest that you articulate your car stories in 60 to 90 seconds times money. Keep that in mind. Before I forget, if you run into a challenge conducting your research, don't hesitate to contact a reference librarian. They can be extremely helpful with regard to research issues, so keep that in mind. I don't know how many people here are members of any industry associations or trade associations, but a trade association, an industry association can provide some extremely useful information regarding trends, issues that are relevant to whatever industry you're pursuing. So that's something you might want to think about using during the course of your research. As you can see, we suggest that you arm yourself with, it says a small arsenal of examples that can be adapted to many behavioral questions. Many behavioral questions trying to get at how you responded to negative situations, choose negative experiences that you made the best of or had positive outcomes. And here's what I think is interesting about this slide. Our examples can come from all areas of life. They can come from, obviously, work experience, but for behavioral questions, they can also come from a community service organization. Does that make you think of any organization off the top of your head? I think you know where I'm going. Or even a class or a school project may have maybe the source for a big car story that's relevant to a specific behavioral question. So keep that in mind. If it's possible for you to articulate a car story in terms of money saved, money earned, or time saved, try to do that because people can relate to numbers. You saved your company $1.6 million because of some new software you developed? Wow, I'm impressed. That's a great story. If you can have a car story for every bullet in your resume, I think that's helpful. It's not easy to do, but it's helpful. And when I say car stories, I'm going to assume that there are a lot of car stories here that members of PSG could tell a prospective employer, and they would be very, very favorably impressed. I just want to talk a little bit about preparation and review. The author of this book, Behavioral Interviewing, recommends identifying 6 to 8 examples from past experience where you demonstrated top behaviors and skills that employers typically seek and list in job postings. Think in terms of examples that will exploit your top selling points. After examples should be totally positive, such as accomplishments or new goals. The other half should be situations that started out negatively, but either ended positively or you made the best of the outcome. with regard to this slide, the recommendation I would make to you is that you may want to write down 3 or 4 key points that you want to communicate about yourself during the course of the interview. And make sure you have at least one car story for each of these 3 or 4 key points that you want to communicate. And then, and then as you communicate each important piece of information, put a check mark next to that item to make sure that it's been addressed. Now you can go on to the next one. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Like what Ellen was starting to say before, let's say that you see, and this is in regard specifically to the behavioral questions, so you see a job advertisement that says, you know, a self-starter, a high energy, whatever words they use. But suppose you read that and you think, that's not me. I don't fit those words that they were saying there. And so then you get into the interview and you know that you can't state those virtues as ones that you have.
I guess it really depends on how closely you think you match the job description, and if those are really critical attributes that the employer deems necessary in order for you to do the job, and you feel that perhaps those are not your strengths, then that would give me pause in terms of pursuing that opportunity. But if they're not critical issues, and overall you think that, you know, this could be a pretty good fit for me, and I'm really attracted to this, I would pursue it in that scenario.
Okay.
Wouldn't you in some cases think about folks you know who have those type of attributes and pretend, or you know, that you're them? Say, if you know like great salesmen like Joe Barnes or Joe Hippobar, you know what they do, then you kind of project that and just, you know, I've heard people say, fake it till you make it. So you know, but you use that and you get that energy and you go for that drive, and therefore you feel that because we're all in sales.
Well, let me just respond to that. I think that that's a good point. And there are lots of sales. If it had to be a salesman, more of a sales-oriented position, there are a lot of sales courses that you can take at Dale Carnegie and lots of others. So if it's something that you were really attracted to and you wanted to pursue it, that's something that you may want to take some sort of formal training and then pursue. If you felt there was that was a critical skill that you were lacking. I don't know if that helps. Sure, go ahead, John.
Hi, Bill. Just to answer your point, one thing to take into consideration in my mind today, I give a presentation, there's a disconnect between what's written by HR and what the hiring manager really wants. So when you see high energy, all these different things, I would question the HR person if you get a phone interview with an HR person. And then as soon as you walk in the room with the hiring manager, I would say, by the way, beside what's on the job description, could you tell me the 3 traits you would like to have in the person you hire? Now, if he says A and it matches what A, high energy, if he says B and it doesn't match what they got, if he says C and it doesn't match what they got, you want to pay attention to what he or she is saying, not what's on that piece of paper. So don't disqualify yourself based on generic labels that might be on that piece of paper. May not have, in fact, be what the hiring manager wants.
I think that's a great point. Again, certainly you want to vary your examples, don't take them all from just one aspect of your life. For the benefit of the people who are new, again, car, challenge, action, result, star, situation, task, action, result. In the event that your resume does not include all of your car stories, you may want to commit the additional car stories to a separate piece of paper. Bring that document with you to the resume, to the interview. With your resume, and review that prior to the beginning of the interview. And I think that will not only help you maintain a positive attitude, but it'll prepare you for the interview, behavioral interview questions. This is the last slide on interviewing. I think that the operative word here is listening. People here who have a sales background will tell you that a big part of selling is listening. And I think when you're in transition, you're in sales. We're all in sales right now. So listening is absolutely critical to an effective interview. Remember, this is not Jeopardy, just for on a real interview. I don't think you have this issue with these questions, but sometimes during an interview, someone may ask a very long, complicated question. What we talk about in interviewing on Fridays is, you don't get points for responding to a question in 1/10 of a second. Take your time, make sure you understand what the question, what they're asking for. You may need to paraphrase it or repeat the question, but make sure you understand it before you respond, collect your thoughts, and then provide an answer that's clear, concise, complete, and to the point. So that's pretty concludes my discussion. You want me to do this, or? Oh, that's fine.
This was one of the things I'll be doing today. So
Sure.
Bill does a lot of training on the whole interviewing section. And while we were talking about, responses, questions and responses and how to prepare for it, he wanted to make sure that we mentioned, what about all those other things that the interviewer is looking at other than what you speak? And that was your list, which means a lot.
When we conduct mock interviews at PSG, this is not a complete list, but we're limited in the amount of time that we can spend because of time constraints and the size of the audience. But these are some of the things that we would look at when we conduct a mock interview, and these are criteria that all the facilitators will use during the workshop. They'll be looking at your posture, your body language, eye contact, are you speaking clearly, using good grammar, are you self-assured but not cocky, are you presenting information logically and getting to the point, and obviously are you using your car stories, and your attitude is, as we all know, is very important. And what kind of an impact are you making on the interview? So those are some things, I know that's a lot, but those are things that the facilitators will look at as they evaluate your responses during the course of the workshop. And we would encourage the other members who are observing while you're answering a question to keep those criteria in mind when you present your observations to the group.
Right, and of course, this is what anybody in a real interview would look for. So we're going to get lean and mean, and this is going to be a lean and mean workshop. Hopefully not too mean. nice to your colleagues. So here's the deal. There's already one facilitator per table who is going to ask you a question. We're just going to take turns. So facilitator asks a question. You then have 2 minutes to respond. And then they'll stop you. Doesn't matter where you are in your response, they will stop you. Then the table will give you feedback as to what they heard. You know, the good, bad, and the ugly. And the whole idea of this is to learn from it. Practice makes perfect. So we're going to give it a whirl. Participants, this is going to be the toughest part, I think. Participants should answer the question as though they're in an actual interview situation. And I know what happens when we do these things. I ask you a question, you ask me a question. Oh, think about that for a minute first. Ooh, that's a tough one. Can you give me another? You would not do that in a real life interview. So just know that if you make up a story, it really doesn't matter. We just want to see how you respond. So practice this like it is a real interview situation. You're being asked a question and answer it. No backstory, no superfluous information. Rinse and repeat. If there's time, you get a chance to do it all over again. Okay, so lean and mean, we have less than half an hour, but good news is we have small numbers of groups, so you get good attention. And I think we're going to finish up around 12:30 because Greg and I are heading out. We have a training
There's
today.
only 2 of us here, and I got it.
So that's it. Go ahead. And thank you.